Every blue moon, you come across a book that's going to change your life and your perspective. And for me, War and Peace did just that. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Linguist Library. If you like bookish content, please like and subscribe. Today, I want to talk about this excellent mosaic that I just finished, War and Peace by Count Leo Tolstoy. This masterpiece has been around for a while and a lot of people have reviewed this, but I do want to gush about it. And if you are like me and you like to watch videos about books you've already read, watch reviews about books you've already read, please enjoy. Stay a while. So, one of the main thing people say that, they hesitate to read this book is because of its size. And I will admit, it's over 580,000 words. So it's a series, really, and it was published initially as a series. It's divided into 2 epilogues and 15 books. And it was initially published in January 1st of 1869, but it starts at least in 1805. And we have this iconic first scene of the Russian court. Specifically, we're having a soiree at Anna Pavlova's house, or mansion, I should say. Anna Pavlova is a maid of honor to the Empress. So we are looking at characters who are mainly aristocrats. There's 5 aristocratic families, which brings me to the topic of the characters. Another reason why a lot of people think that this is a difficult book is because of the number of characters. Going into this book with this mindset, I thought the same. And I was like, oh, really? So I just made a character map and I will make it available to you in the description box. But I ended up not needing it because Leo Tolstoy is very good at explaining what he wants to explain, so you know where you are at all times. And also, the main characters make themselves known as the story progresses. You kind of stick to them long enough to know that they matter. But nonetheless, we have these 5 aristocratic families that we look at, and we have the most beautiful picture of reality that I have seen in a while. I want to talk about my edition because I hated this edition. I cannot say enough bad things about this. I wish I'd been smart enough, like my friend Emily from Prose and Petticoats, to get this in 3 different books, because the font size to fit this story into 900-ish pages was very difficult to read. Not to mention that I found an actual typo, which is so disrespectful. I mean, dear editor, we're talking about Count Tolstoy. A little more respect, please. But the translation is amazing, and I was really happy with it. This is the Maude Translation, which was approved and signed off by Tolstoy. It does preserve a little bit of French, so most of the dialogue, especially in the beginning of the story, is in French. So the aristocrats in Russia not only spoke French, but they barely spoke Russian, which I didn't know. Some of them even ended up having to hire people to teach them how to write Russian as the story progresses and the French invade and become the enemy. But even if you do speak French, you want to check out the footnotes because of the historical context. For example, there's a little nod to the Duke of Marlborough with a French folk song that kind of goes like this. The Duke of Marlborough is going to war, no one knows when he's going to come back. Something like that. So check out the footnotes. They're very helpful with context. And if you're worried about the historical context, like I was, if you like to make a big deal out of things, like I do, I'm going to recommend these books, these historical nonfictions, in case you want to check them out. So basically what we're looking at is Russia internally, so the situation between the serfs and basically the peasantry and the aristocrats. We're looking at the Romanovs and the offspring of the stud farms of Protestant Germany. I've borrowed that sentence from Victoria Alive. And we're looking at the French Revolution and a little bit of French literature too, like the social contract. Along with that, we're looking at the river campaign that the Romanovs waged. But all of this is very well explained in the beginning of the book. It has a lot of context, so even if you don't have access to any of these books, you really don't need it. You will know what he's trying to say. I did tab this book a lot. As you can see, I was reading and journaling, so I had a reading journal with all of the main points that I wanted to reflect on. It's that kind of book. I have to say that this is probably one of the best philosophies books that I've read in a while. In fact, his second epilogue is very different from the first. The first is normal, like a few years on in the life of the characters, but the second epilogue is mostly about philosophy and about his view of history and of life and how historians portray history and how we perceive it. Very insightful, very profound. He is, if you wanted to tell somebody, what does reality on this planet look like? Leo Tolstoy painted a pretty perfect picture of that. Talk about realism, right? I have to mention that I loved his bromance. I love Pierre and Andrew's dynamic and their friendship. Every time they were on the screen, I was thoroughly engaged. I loved it. I, of course, have to talk about Natasha because I also want to recommend a few adaptations. So, Audrey Hepburn playing Natasha is going to live in my head rent-free forever. I did get a chance to take a look at the BBC adaptation. I thought it was a little weird that the first episode starts when the French are already in Moscow. There was a big jump into the book. We're like 500 pages into the book already. But I like the actors. It looked really good. I like the imagery. It was really well produced. I just want to say one more time that this despite the size and everything that you may have heard contrary to what I'm about to tell you, this is very much worth your time if you're at all interested in history or historical fiction, or if you are European and you want to see what the landscape used to look like. This is very insightful. I was so into it. This is honestly one of the best books I've read in my life. It is an absolute, I'm not going to say it's a 5 stars just because of how some of my favorite characters ended. I just finished this. It took me about a little over a month to read it, and I slept on it before talking to you about it because I just needed to. I needed to sleep on it. But I'm still not over it. I don't want to ruin the experience, so I'm not going to tell you anything else about it. But it didn't end the way I wanted it to, as most books don't. But I loved it, and I'm going to reread it. Just not this edition. I'm going to buy a different edition because Wordsworth Classics edition is just too small. The font size is too small, and having a typo in a classic like this one is legitimately unacceptable. I hope this review was somewhat coherent. I hope that my love came through. My love for this book came through. I honestly don't know if I've read a better philosophy book this year. I have to say that maybe it's because I've been 29 for a few summers now, but I got so much from this book. Towards the end, as the characters matured, it was so beautiful to see how they interacted. It's a rite of passage if you like historical fiction, but if you consider yourself a lover of classic literature or just good writing, you want to read Leo Tolstoy, and you definitely want to read War and Peace. I mean, I've seen Leo write in many different ways, and I think his control of language is exquisite. His metaphors and his similes. Every time he was talking about Napoleon, he would compare him to a child. So as a child, like a child, very egotistical character who was capricious and spoiled. One thing I didn't expect was his humor. His dry humor and his delivery was just superb and very unexpected. Let me read this little passage for you. He had what the doctors termed bilious fever. But despite the fact that the doctors treated him, bled him, and gave him medicine to drink, he recovered. I love him coming for doctors here. But of course, there's no comparison to how he comes for historians. Half of the book is him talking directly to historians. But no, I love his prose, and I appreciated his humble way of describing war and why war happens. So there's a beautiful metaphor that he uses when he's philosophizing about that. I might have to read it. I'm going to read it for you. Just give me a second. When an apple has ripened and falls, why does it fall? Because of its attraction to the earth? Because its stalk withers? Because it is dried by the sun? Because it grows heavier? Because the wind shakes it? Or because the boy standing below wants to eat it? Nothing is the cause. All is only the coincidence of conditions in which all vital organic elemental events occur. And the botanist who finds that the apple falls because the cellular tissue decays and so forth is equally right with the child who stands under the tree and says the apple fell because he wanted to eat it and prayed for it. Equally right or wrong is he who says that Napoleon went to Moscow because he wanted to, and perished because Alexander desired his destruction. In historic events, the so-called great men are labels giving names to events, and like labels, they have but the smallest connection with the event itself. So I think he had a problem with historians coining the whole revolutionary movement, the Napoleonic Wars. But that's just my perception of it. I might be reading into it, which brings me to another thing that I picked up on. And again, this could be just a personal bias. But at some point, he takes a few liberties throughout his story, and he also goes into internal thoughts of his characters, as well as of actual historical figures. So he, at some point, makes fun of Napoleon because apparently Napoleon got to Moscow and was really impressed and somewhat intrigued, or perhaps even mocking the amount of churches that Moscow has. And I think that that's just funny because for somebody who crowned himself king of Italy, if you've ever been to Rome, you know that Rome has probably a third more churches than Moscow does. So, king of Italy, non ci penso proprio. But I wasn't sure if Tolstoy was making fun of him or not until I think in his second epilogue, when he's in fact using the first person, he talks about being reminded of the Colosseum. So he did go to Rome, and he knew that Napoleon didn't. I looked it up. It turned out he didn't. He never actually went to Rome. Napoleon, that is. Tolstoy did. But no, this is a fantastic book. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble and gush for so long. I just really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Check out the community tab. I love that you're here, and I want to hear your thoughts on this fantastic mosaic of reality. What did you think of this book? Did you like it? Did you read it? Are you thinking about reading it? If you are, don't buy the Wordsworth Classic Edition. This is a terrible edition. Listen to what I'm telling you. But no, Did you listen to Tchaikovsky? Did you listen to classical music? 1812 March by Tchaikovsky, or is it just me, my own walking cliche alone over here? Let me know. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.